So this is a story that I got from a Reddit user named Sure Needleworker.
Needle worker?
Yeah, I'm almost certain this is like a default Reddit name that they didn't change.
It's not a good one.
Uh,
Sorry.
yeah. So this is I wish I had come up with a title like you do. Now next week I want to make titles for my stories.
I want to use them in the titles when we put it out in podcast form. That's kind of why I'm doing it.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I wish I had done that, but I didn't. All right. So this happened to me in my early teens. I'm 21 now. My best friend growing up had this huge farmhouse in the middle of Virginia. It was very old and beautiful, but also had a very dark history. In the house, there's a tunnel that led to an underground room of sorts that was used for slaves to hide in the 1800s. And I'm 90% sure that some died down there while hiding. So you can imagine the history and energy that fills this house. I always felt scared there. I never felt alone and wouldn't go anywhere alone in the house, even just to grab something out of my room. Even the family was scared to stay there with no company because of the intense apparitions that they had seen and experiences. The rooms were massive, and the entire house was white with honestly creepy vintage decor. There was even a cabinet of ventriloquist dolls upstairs. They were a really odd family, honestly, with lots of problems. Anyways, the second time I visited that house, I was with my mom, my best friend at the time, and her mom. It was a girls' trip. One night, I woke up and was so thirsty, and the last thing I wanted to do was go downstairs and get water. I was terrified. I hated that house at night, but my mom was dead asleep, so I literally sprinted downstairs with my head only looking at the floor. I made my water in 5 seconds flat, and when I made it to the stairs, something compelled me to look at the giant glass doors that were in front of the stairs. I was horrified, but felt like I needed to look out the window. What I saw when I looked at that window will haunt me for the rest of my life. I saw a man as real as anything I've ever seen. It was pitch black outside with a huge, bright moon. The man was jet black, like a silhouette, but because of the moon being so bright, I could clearly see his entire body. He was blacker than black, like he stood out so much I 100% thought he was a trespasser. He was wearing a top hat and was unhumanly tall, 7 feet around that area. My heart literally felt like it had stopped beating. I felt like I was in a trance. I was so unexplainably horrified, but I couldn't look away. He was moving a little bit, almost like breathing. Then, about 10 seconds later, he was gone, disappearing into thin air. I panicked and bolted upstairs as I snapped out of my trance. I cried to my mom and was up all night. The next morning, I told my friend and her mom about the experience, and they were not shocked at all, as they had seen multiple full body apparitions in the house themselves. The nanny that worked for them even refused to go into some rooms of the house. I never went back to that house again.
Wow. I don't think I would either.
No.
Evidently, fear was a factor for that.
Yeah. Although this,
I'm okay with having fear as a factor for me
Yeah.
under most scenarios.
I think when I was listening to that story, just the thought of the jet black thing.
Yeah.
So, like, you're talking like shadow figure, like jet black, or like.
Yeah, it's a shadow figure. In fact, I have saw several other stories all referencing a man in a top hat. Apparently, this is a entity that makes its way around, and some people say that they've seen. Other people who commented on that story also said that they have seen the man in the top hat, and they said he was always 7 feet tall or so, and it's jet black.
The man in the top hat.
Yeah.
That's the name of the story right there.
Yeah, there you go.
That's the name of the story. The man in the top hat. That's terrifying. The Big Bad Wolf song is definitely playing. My gosh. The man in the top hat. Jack, you ever seen the man in the top hat?
Well, no, it does jar a memory of something, but not specifically that. The shadowy figure thing.
A lot of
is-
people talk
is-
about it.
It's always unsettling because you can't quite. It's almost like you can kind of picture it, like you can picture seeing someone or something like that, and then it's those lack of details that really kind of seem to stick around the most.
Yeah, it's like you're kind of left to fill in the blanks per
Yeah.
se. Oh, terrifying.
So one thing that really stuck out to me was that, this is, obviously a kid's recollection of the events that happened. Whether or not this person was an evil apparition or entity, or if it was just actually someone, a trespasser, and then in their mind they blew up to the size of a 7-foot tall, monstrous looking person in a top hat. That's something that's hard to say, and it's like I said, he shows up in a lot of people's stories, but I can also see this being like a case of like someone actually was there, which in a lot of ways is as terrifying, if not more so. I do believe this person saw something that night, and so I think this is a credible, scary story. Whether or not, like much like the last one, whether the events unfolded exactly as they perceived them to be, that's one thing. But I thought it was a good story, regardless.
Yeah, I agree. It's kind of like Slender Man, right? Like, but you had the folklore of this man in the top hat. It's terrifying. I do think that when you see something in the dark, it kind of does leave your mind to kind of like complete whatever you're seeing, because you don't really know how, when you're in the dark, you don't really know how tall things are. You don't really know how big things are. You can only speculate based on what you can or cannot see. So